Welcome everybody to this Content Stack and Forrester combined webinar. The title for this webinar is Digital Experiences Across the Enterprise. And digital experiences being a very hot topic in our industry, we are here to explore how something called headless content can serve not just your customers, but of course your customers, but also your employees and digital product experiences. So without further ado, let me introduce our VIP guest speaker today, Mark Grannon, who is a senior analyst with Forrester and who I've known for many years. Mark, thank you for joining us. You've followed Content Stack and the industry, and you're really helping Forrester clients understand digital experience solutions and helping them drive better engagement with their customers and their partners. So you've been in the industry for a while and at Forrester for almost a decade. And your research focuses on digital experience platforms, which is very, very relevant for today's discussion, as well as content management and content management systems. So I would love to hand it over to you and get your perspective on today's topic, digital experiences, and how headless content can serve those.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Really great to be here with you and to speak to the audience about headless. And this title, for those who are fans of child books around Dr. Seuss, you'll understand the metaphor here because we really do want to explore all the places we could potentially go with headless content and how this approach to digital experience architecture, the way you're going to build that stack, can start to solve more problems. Specifically, how can it solve problems like digital products, employee experiences, and customer experiences, which Matthew already alluded to. So let's start. But actually, let's start with a reboot. Let's reboot digital experiences architecture, because I want to take away this notion that digital experiences, this new platform that you're going to buy and turn on, and it's going to magically solve for your customer experience engagement issues, because ultimately, as an architecture, it can be much, much more. But in typical fashion, let's start outside in. Let's start with the customer. The customer has many, many touch points, from web to mobile to email to messaging, all of these different ways to engage with our brand, our company. And we enable those touch points commonly through spending some money. We spend some money through services providers. They bring expertise and extended bench. Maybe they bring third-party data. Certainly, they help us do things like order fulfillment in a country we don't operate in. All types of fun stuff with the services providers. They enable these touch points. And then what do we do inside our enterprise? Well, we leverage foundational infrastructure to develop and manage and deliver some of the core elements of a platform, where we're going to do things like platform certification, we're going to do things like security models, and we're going to bookend this infrastructure with two key pieces that really bridge into the touch points: analytics and automation. Because if you can measure it, you should be able to automate it eventually. That should be one of the key goals. And those goals will help you to accelerate these operations faster and faster. But you're asking, what operations? We have a hollow box here. Let's fill that in. Let's fill that in with three areas of data: core data services around customer data, content, and transactions. These platform services are going to be the new anchor tenants to help you streamline your efforts, but also stitch together really complex experiences across different journeys, different touch points over time. But many of you are asking, but where do I work? Well, you work here, most likely. If you aren't a data scientist or you aren't a back-end developer, you're going to work here. You're going to orchestrate those customer experiences in the vein of marketing or merchandising. Maybe even you're an employee-facing experience manager. Maybe you're in HR or leadership training within your organization. And this is the set of tools that you're probably very aware of. You use them day in and day out. So here's our new architecture. It's been assembled from a bunch of different pieces. You can see it being built out in layers. But one of the key aspects to rebooting this is that it's not just you. It's not just the way you're seeing your own reflection in the way you work. It's something more. In fact, it's rebooting it because it's now a reference architecture, something that's inherently adaptable to many different phases of the customer journey. You can see us literally stamping this out across loyalty and rewards or transactions or service, and it reflects or it mirrors the customer journey. We really literally are putting the customer at the center of our focus as we start to build out these competencies and capabilities. So let's boil this whole complex thing down into a yin and yang scenario. First, we need to establish this digital experience platform architecture that strives for the operational side, the core platform. So remember those core black boxes on the previous slides around content, customer data, and transactions. We need those platform foundations to be flexible, agnostic, to serve as core assets that can maximize our scale, our quality across channels and systems. And certainly some of us will manage for that core system scale and quality. Others of us are too often focused on the channel-specific tooling. We're enabling employees to engage with the customers or the partners or the employees where and how and where they prefer. And too often we said that these two things are inherently linked. And creating these patterns for product or customer or employee inherently meaning three different stacks. To do anything else was too hard to really think about. For those of us who grew up in the 80s with Mario 3, maybe you'll think about this analogy. It really was one of these bonus screens where you're trying to catch the different parts of the stack to make sure that you're using the right tool sets to match it up to be okay, here's the right full stack application, full stack set of capabilities for this one area. Doing it with dynamically is really hard. So unless we come up with a new way. And here's Headless. It's an architectural paradigm where we sever the feedback loop between the channel and the back end. And we start to treat them in a more agnostic fashion. Now, for those of you who understand what this means, it can feel a little scary. It can feel a little scary because back to our hot air balloon analogy of, oh, the places you'll go, the Dr. Seuss book. Well, what if you're scared of heights? This can feel a little bit daunting. Now we're up off the ground, away from our comfort zone, and it can feel scary because as practitioners, we might lose some things that we've become very accustomed to. The WYSIWYG in context editing, the traditional web publishing workflows, and the marketing or merchandising rules and targeting and analytics management. It's all those aspects of that box that was part of experience orchestration. We assumed that to have that, we could have all the core services. We had to have a unique set of core services underneath, a full stack application. But what if we could think about a new way? What if we keep the back end consistent and we tailor the experience orchestration and certainly the customer experience to suit the needs of those individuals? Now, could we honestly answer a really hard question? Could we do this for any scenario? Can we create a new model where we have a flexible front-end set of capabilities that will adapt, and we have a more core set of assets on the back end that are also adaptable, but they also maintain consistency? Well, let's explore those three models that Matthew teased out. The first one is digital products, arguably one of the most complex, but ultimately where a lot of us are trying to drive our business towards because of the repeatable nature and how sticky products can be. Now let's take an example of a CPG good, a shoe. And we can all acknowledge that really products that were traditional, a one-to-many type scenario, really aren't that simple anymore. Now we can quickly go to a shoe manufacturer today like Converse and see all the different ways we can customize the shoe based on our preferences of color or fabric or style. Maybe making a very bespoke shoe just for us, literally a one-to-one type of experience. And let's make it even more complicated. Let's digitally enable that product, because not only is that shoe customized, and we could think about how the common back end for content would provide a static picture of that shoe based on your custom colorway. You'd actually make that available across a whole bunch of channels so that when I log in via the app or on the website or in the email, it all looks the same and no two customers are alike. But now we're going to take it one step further. We're going to cross this threshold into these digitally enabled products. And honestly, it's where the market is already going today. The shoes that produce data that is analyzed and visualized within an app. And not only that, we can now use that data to do further engagement. We can use potentially AI-based technology and analysis to say when it's time to replace that shoe, to offer a coupon based on loyalty status, and to potentially recognize the location of that individual and then make a recommendation, hey, come back into the store, you're nearby. All of this is painting a vision which we're lusting after, right? We really want to get to this state where we know our customer and we don't just view metrics through the static lens of what a distribution partner might give back to us. But buyer beware. Don't let your eyes get bigger in your stomach, because ultimately moving to a software business could be a slippery slope. Just look at the example from Nike, where their self-lacing shoes, kind of modeled after Back to the Future, were actually bricked based on a firmware update. Certainly not a future for everyone, but I think we can all see the future where using a common content backend can really help us to start accelerating and move towards a model of a digitally enabled product or service. So shifting gears to the second scenario around employee experiences, we can all rest assured that this is comfortably dead. Your corporate intranet is dead. It's had the funeral, it's dead and buried. Good riddance, right? Well, that's totally not true. We all know that even though my colleague Cheryl McKinnon, who I love her research, this is not dead in the way we could think of it, because it's taking on a whole new life or a whole new mandate, which is to cut through employee distraction. And make no mistake, employees are distracted. Not only do they have the intranet, they have their productivity applications, they have their collaboration applications, they're using really advanced security type tooling, they're using a variety of devices that either they own or you own, and it really is complex as to how to engage them. Now, if we think about how customer experience and employee experience are intertwined, we can start to see some pretty interesting possibilities. We can see these possibilities around employee experience and customer experience because when a customer support employee, so a customer-facing employee, wants to leverage something like an intranet, the site's content, styling, theming, ease of use is pretty paramount to their ability to leverage it strategically, right? And serving up the right experience to the customer to find out what it is they're supposed to do. And specifically, you might think about process articles. What happens during an escalation when an unhappy customer calls up and wants to debook? What about new promotions that are coming that you want to help drive through the service channel, not just a direct sales channel? What about public communications? How do we give our customer service or customer-facing employees the right standard response that doesn't put our company at risk, but also is transparent to the end customer around maybe an item being out of stock that they were counting on? And certainly, let's help them with self-help articles. Let's help that end customer serve themselves before they ever try to get on a 1-800 call center number or start to use a virtual agent or a chatbot. Because ultimately, if we can solve their problem ahead of time, that's all the better. So you can think all the ways that a common content backend, really making sure this is exposed and accessible to your customer-facing, customer support employees, it will really take friction out of their day, and it should make for a better customer experience. Now, on the flip side, something that's purely operational, purely employee-centric, think about HR and legal policies, but think about them all in one place. Oh, wait, that doesn't happen. It's not so helpful when no one can find them because they aren't indexed properly or because the search capabilities are terrible on your intranet. So I want to paint a future, a new possible future for your intranet. And it looks like this. Now, wouldn't that be great? The search bar, a voice-enabled contextual search bar where you can ask for your latest pay stub, for the latest policy, how to trigger a new career planning meeting, all types of fun stuff. And if you can think about one of the most complex experiences in the world, which is a whole internet-based search, Google, and then they've done this too. They boiled it down to a common search bar. So if it's good enough for them, maybe it's good enough for an intranet. But you have to have a really good content backend to make it possible. So let's shift to scenario number 3, customer and partner experiences. Probably the one we're most comfortable with if we're coming from either a marketing or a merchandising type of role. Now, one of the challenges that marketers and merchandisers are facing is that understanding your customer, this whole pursuit of 360-degree view and understanding of your customer is absolutely paramount today. We're looking at trying to pull in profile data, transaction history, and behavioral data. And we're trying to cross-reference that into this really rich profile that's available to contextualize and personalize engagement. On the flip side, the product data is kind of skimpy by comparison. We might have catalog and color. We might even have some marketing data around promotional images. But this whole scenario feels a little bit out of balance. And if we think about how that balance is, or imbalance, is upsetting our ability to operate, you can think about maybe one of the reasons why. And one of the reasons why is that even if they were balanced, they don't talk the same language. How are we supposed to sync up our profiles and our segmentation models with our product and our catalog models? They don't share enough common data. And if you're one of the lucky few where they actually do have a good shared taxonomy to link these two, you probably don't have enough contextually relevant variants of the content to meet all the different permutations of the customer profile meeting context. So how do we avoid this scenario? How do we prevent content from being our personalization bottleneck? Well, one way we can do that is we can stop this hemorrhaging loss of data where we're consistently creating content variants, or we're leveraging user-generated content, or we're paying for content, and it simply sands through the hourglass without capturing it. Because if we can capture it, we can understand it. And then we can also potentially reuse it. And we can reuse it in creating more variants. So keyword here, variants. We need to have more variants that are contextually relevant against all of the different attributes of the customer data that we're building so that we can tailor those to the customers and the context. And we can also use them to dynamically compose the experience. So if we can't assume we know everything right away about a customer, well, maybe we can leverage a few questions, an onboarding form, something in session that will then pull different content, which will trigger a different set of experiences. And ultimately, your operations internally can leverage the analytics to do things like attribution, the holy grail of marketing, understanding the impact of your spend on customer activity. Ergo, we can refine that over time. Not only can we refine that, we can refine the content creation. We can actually use smarter operations to accelerate the cost of a piece of content. And ultimately, that moves us to a perpetual motion machine. This whole thing gets set in motion, and it really changes the nature of work. Because the minute you stop creating content is the minute the personalization engine stops running. And if we think about this new model, well, maybe we're just setting it in motion and we're tweaking some of the patterns and paradigms to refine the relevance over time. So I want to pull an example from some research I did a couple of years ago with some colleagues around localization, because I think this might be an informative way to think about variance creation. And we think about translation, increasingly it's no longer a pencils down activity. You create the core language experience, then you save up the file, you FTP it off to the translator, it comes back, you upload it, and there's no way to really track the process. There's no way to alter the source content in flight. And that was yesteryear. Today, we can think of this as a living, breathing process. And there's middleware around translation memory. There's all these technologies and services to prep the content, to do things like pre-translation. And we can think of that new ecosystem and even start to combine it with things like NLP or natural language processing to do sentiment detection, auto summarization. And now you're starting to get into this notion of perpetual motion, right? And I can create content, it can create the variants or at least recommended versions of a variant, and we can do it across languages or business units. And this model is potentially something we can learn from in more creative type content, so images or body copy or something else that would be more, it would kind of pull at the heartstrings of that end customer. So let's move back to our architecture. Let's round out this conversation with architecture, because that big body of capabilities that really, I said it should be a reference architecture across a whole bunch of your organization. If we just think about content, it has so much power to help with this. It sits right at the heart of this architecture. And we can add transparency and access to common content so that the marketing team isn't recreating a service or knowledge article and vice versa once a product goes live. We can think about common authoring, delivery, and analytics so that we can actually accelerate those processes over time and refine them based on what we already know, what we know resonates with an audience. We can reuse content because this should not be a one and done. This should absolutely be using that great campaign or set of assets or even a user-generated set of assets again and again, and maybe refining that over time. And ultimately, that leads to faster, more agile operations. We're able to do more with the same team, the same resources that we have today. Ultimately, that's a pretty scary picture for moving to a headless model, but the view here is worth it, right? The opportunities might just be worth it to enable those things if we start to abstract the content from the channel or from the experience or from the scenario. So, the places you'll go, and I want to land off or finish up with a few key takeaways. So key takeaway number one, reuse of your core assets really does set you up to master omnichannel and beyond. Headless should not be an initiative in and of itself. It should be a gateway drug to this digital experience architecture that enables omnichannel. And it's more than just reuse of assets. It's the process and the data too about creating and managing and delivering content. Because accelerating that process and enriching that data really will be key to unlocking this new model of agile creation and delivery. And that agile operational model, where it's a test and iterate and learn quick and be more nimble, that will be important for almost everyone to master for any scenario. So definitely that's an area where content leaders need to maybe be part of the first foray into this new world as the entire organization starts to transform. So I want to say thank you for letting me speak with you today.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for taking us through this evolution of an architecture and kind of the journey that the industry is on. I would love to complement that with a perspective and some examples of what we're seeing customers build, actual customers in the real world deploy using this new architecture, and hopefully inspire the audience to explore this further. And just for context setting, for those of you that don't know Content Stack, so we're at the intersection of two very interesting spaces. The lines between them are increasingly blurring. So think of us as a content management system. Think of us at the core of a digital experience platform. Think of us as powering the content that sits at the center of these content-driven experiences. So Mark very, very poignantly made the point that there is tremendous power with content. I always think about it as there's a tremendous investment that companies and enterprises are making into content. Millions and millions of dollars get invested into creating powerful, engaging content. And really this new architecture and the blending of these spaces is where you are able to return that investment, and not just get return on investment in terms of dollars, but get sort of a broader return on the experiences that you're creating. And I couldn't agree more with what Mark said in terms of headless being this new architecture. For us, headless is not a product. For us, headless is in fact a new architecture as well. And it's the catalyst because for the first time, you're able to do something that goes beyond the web, which for many, many years was the one digital channel that mattered and the one digital outlet for digital content. Of course, now we live in a world where web is just one of a myriad of channels, and whether it's mobile or emerging channels like AR and VR or voice or IoT interaction points, the beauty of this headless architecture is that actually your technology stack and your ability to do all these things effectively becomes easier because you have this central content hub, and for the first time really have a purview over all these channels. So we think headless is the future. And the other key point here is that with headless and this new architecture, it's an opportunity for the two teams that in the past have worked maybe off of different agendas and had different tools and different, maybe just not a common set of language and approaches and processes, for them to come together. And we fundamentally believe that in order to do this right, business and IT are equally important at the table. Developers can create amazing, powerful, engaging, modern, award-winning experiences, but there's no point in doing that when no one on the business side adopts it. And likewise, a business person wants to not wait on IT to fix spelling mistakes in a digital experience or even on a website. They want to be doing marketing. They want to really find a way of engaging their audiences. And so for the first time, headless allows us to deliver different tools, different processes to the different audiences in a way where it brings them together and really works for companies. So when that happens, what we see is that companies are able to go way, way beyond the old world of content management and the web. And we have many retail clients with physical brick and mortar stores and locations. And so digital kiosks, which I'm sure everyone on this call has at some point interacted with, are a great way of leveraging a headless architecture, because instead of having this standalone digital device, which of course that part is relatively easy to build, you can now create a point of interaction with your audience that connects with all your other content initiatives. So what you're seeing on this screen is personalized to the person standing in front of it, because the kiosk is able to recognize and pull a profile and then serve content that is personalized for that particular user, not a broad demographic. And more importantly, as the brand behind, the retail brand behind this evolves its branding or brings new products to market, well, that delivery can happen simultaneously across all the different channels, whether it's on the corporate website, the e-commerce store, on a mobile app, or in fact, the digital kiosk. And we're seeing that happen out there in the real world now, where traditionally, this would be a very complicated model to support. With a headless model, this becomes easy, and it doesn't become a data silo, but it actually integrates with the other initiatives, content initiatives and experiences that a brand may have. We deliberately ordered the examples from the more, the less obvious maybe to the more intuitive. So the actual marketing and sales and web use cases are ones that you can think of immediately when you think about content management and even a headless architecture. But product experiences driven by headless are extremely powerful. Products, for many companies, the digital property is their product, and being able to connect the content in the product and the actual user experience of the product to all the other initiatives that a company providing that product has is extremely powerful. So your headless CMS cannot just provide your content for your web domain, it can actually provide the content for your in-product experience, and connecting those two allows you to do incredible things in terms of the content dissemination and also in terms of tracking and measuring what's resonating with your audiences. So we're seeing a lot of digital companies, digital first or digital only companies with digital products power their content through Content Stack. IoT is maybe another non-intuitive area where content can actually play a very important role, and content can come in the form of what's displayed on digital display of a device. It can come in the form of audio. Again, there's power in being able to not have generic messages, whether they're product information or error messages or two-way communication, but actually having that content be meaningful, be integrated with the entire customer journey, and then also be connected back to the manufacturer and the provider of that experience, so that you can continuously iterate on the content and provide the right kind of content, which may change over time and change over the course of having an IoT experience. Again, Headless makes this very, very easy. In the realm of in-product, we actually have quite a number of gaming companies that are now moving to a headless model, because the in-game experience is intrinsically linked to content. The narrative, what you see, what you do as a gamer, obviously centers around content. And likewise, the way that you might first find out about a game on the gaming provider's website, those are different digital properties. And from a gaming manufacturer's perspective, those need to be in sync. If I bring to market a new game, if I change the storyline, if I bring an add-on module to market, then ideally my marketing teams, my game developers are all in sync, and they're using the same content infrastructure to tell the same story on different properties. Back in the 90s, 2000s, and even the last decade, those were different technology stacks. They were different teams. They were not in sync. With Headless, there's an opportunity to bring these worlds together and allow the game developers to be better and more efficient at bringing their games to life, and then audiences to have a consistent experience in and beyond the game. Speaking of game, this is sort of the physical manifestation. Many sports teams that work with us have a very unique perspective on their fan experience, because they have digital properties, right? They've been doing social marketing for a long time. They have mobile apps, they have a website, they have an online community, but they also have a physical space where fans congregate during game time. Sometimes these arenas and stadiums get used for other venues like concerts. So there's an overlap between the digital and the physical world for a fan, for an attendee of such an event. And it's very easy for that experience to feel disjointed and to have a lot of different sources for content and a lot of different systems providing a piecemeal experience. With Headless, you can bring all that together. You can actually integrate the different content sources and maybe the fan profile that you've collected for the last 20 years with real-time information about what the fan is doing while they're at a game time, and then deliver a personalized experience, a personalized offer that is contextually relevant. So if someone always goes to the game, sits in the same seat, is a season ticket holder, and orders the same food and drink, then you can actually make them an offer that relates to that particular preference. And depending on where they are in the arena, you can guide them to the shortest line or the best kiosk to satisfy their curiosity or what they're looking to experience. And of course, there's many more scenarios where bringing together the physical and digital world in a sports arena provides way more than just a mobile app with scores. So there's a couple of clients that are doing this really well. And we've got a link to the case studies at the end of this. Of course, sales support, the obvious use case for content, or sales and marketing, I should say. Support is maybe a less obvious use case, but so important for many industries. In fact, for companies, let's say hospitality, the post-sales experience is even more important than the sales experience, because you're just buying a room online, but then when you're actually in the room, that's the real experience. And so digitally enhancing that experience, making sure content is there, making sure the right content is there to support if there is an issue, can make or break the success and the engagement of that experience. And wouldn't it be nice if that support context and content was not just individualized to the situation and the person maybe experiencing an issue with the room, but also consistent across the mobile app that you might be using to troubleshoot, consistent across the website with an FAQ, consistent no matter which of the 3,000 agents you're speaking to about this issue. Headless CMS is the perfect architecture for this because it connects all the dots and it makes it really easy for the business to iterate on the content and to make sure that what's working is what's chosen for support cases. And then finally, to end on a very familiar note here, commerce, digital commerce, online commerce. There's nothing more frustrating for an e-tailer than not be able to change content quickly. Because think about a Cyber Monday sale, think about changing inventory, think about certain spikes in demand. You need to be able to very, very quickly respond based on customer behavior, based on your supply chain, based on trends or certain things that happen. And the headless architecture that we're seeing take off is exciting because it puts power to the business users for their products and the ability to create offers that match directly to inventory. And then, of course, to multiply that in terms of where the experience can be received by an audience. So whether you're on the website or on the mobile app or even a physical store, the commerce experience becomes consistent and one with a headless architecture. So you can probably tell we're very excited about headless and the potential to just catalyze a new generation of experiences that go well beyond just managing content. We've actually written a bunch of guides to help inspire and to give you a starting point if this is the first time that you are experiencing or hearing about headless. So we have some headless CMS guides. We have some digital experience use cases that go into much more depth than the time allows in this webcast, but it certainly gives you some ideas of what kind of return can I expect if I invest in these digital experiences, and how are people going about doing this? And then the recommendation that we always make about a next step is if this seems interesting and relevant, there's only so much you can do reading materials. You have to run a POC. There's nothing more powerful than running a POC with access to headless technology and seeing what works in your context of your business. And so not an abstract POC, but actually solving a real world problem. Maybe the thing on the backlog that no one's been able to get to, or maybe that nagging challenge with content management that you've had for the last 20 years. It could be small, it could be tactical, but running a headless POC will help you quantify and will help you see how to embed this technology architecture into your existing processes without having to change them. One great way of thinking about this is not just in terms of dollar in, dollar out, but actually more holistically in terms of the return that you will get across a set of dimensions that go well beyond just a financial return. Of course, there needs to be financial return, but there's a more holistic set of benefits on investing in experiences. And we've developed a framework that we use with customers and with partners, where we can, in a quick 2-hour workshop that includes marketing and IT, come up with an analysis and an assessment for, first of all, how you're doing today. You'll end up with a scorecard and a benchmark to see how your digital initiatives are doing in terms of their maturity or the organization's maturity. What are others in your industry doing? What could you be doing better? And then a detailed analysis for some of the digital content initiatives that you either already have in progress or that you'd like to kick off, and how to go about bringing those to life. So those are some next steps here on. Hopefully this was interesting and relevant. We're again, very, very grateful, Mark, that you could join and guide us and share your industry perspective. We hope that we were able to inspire with some use cases. And for everyone on the call who would like to stay in touch or connect or reach out, we have many, many channels, content channels and communication channels for you to engage us on, and we'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time today. I'd like to thank you again, Mark, and we will speak to you on the next one.